Hi, this is Annie Grace, and I am answering readers' questions. And today I have a great question, and it is, Dear Annie, could you please speak to this? I love food, and I usually love Bon Appetit magazine, but I was shocked to read this message this morning. I am 2+ years sober in many ways thanks to your book, and I was under the impression that there was a general demystification of alcohol happening in our world. But then I read something like this, and I'm reminded that the same BS that conditioned me into thinking daily drinking for any reason was not only good but applauded, cultured and chic is still acceptable. I bypass a lot of alcohol positive media, but this one really struck me. I would hope you use your platform to highlight the issue here. So I'm not going to speak like specifically to this because there's so much of it. And I think the bottom line, the question is really, how do I ignore alcohol positive media? And it was really hard for me. I remember when my whole family, me kind of excluded because I'm not that big of a sports fan, but my whole family is a big sports fan. And our football team here locally won the Super Bowl. And the quarterback, who was somebody who everybody looked up to, got on TV right after they won the Super Bowl. This was 5-6 years ago now. And he basically said, I want to, the first thing I want to do is crack open a Bud Light and then kiss my wife. And I think it was even in that order. And I remember watching it, and I would probably think I was between 1 year and 2 years alcohol free at the time, and just having this pit in my stomach and feeling like, oh my gosh, really? Really? Like, that's like, my kids are watching this. This is the message we want to give, that that's the most important thing. That's the thing that you're going to do and crown this achievement with. That's where we are. And I remember just kind of feeling this pit in my stomach and thinking about it, because one of the things that I love to do, and I highly recommend everybody do, is when we feel those pits in our stomach, when we feel those energy snags, when we feel those points of negative emotion around something that happened, what we tend to do is we tend to run away from it. And by the way, try to numb it with something else or ignore it and push it under the surface. And what I think is the best thing for us to do is to really go into it and to explore, why did that trigger me? Why did that make me feel uncomfortable? Why was I so upset about this stranger's response? And, is it something that really is worth me exploring and doing something about, or is it something that I can make more peace with? And what expectations, by the way, do I have of the world that's leading to my discontent? And so I went away and I thought about this, and I remember even journaling about it and just realizing that, wow, like, my anger and my frustration is actually internal, because I would have been saying that same thing. I would have been in a position, if I was in a position of influence like that, I would have said something about alcohol without even second guessing it, without even thinking twice about it. And instead of being frustrated, I was like, okay, I'm going to see this as, we still have work to do. There's still important conversations to be had. And by the way, it's not his fault that he just doesn't know yet, because I just didn't know. I didn't know for years. I didn't know for decades. Like, my drinking career was fueled by not knowing. And so now it's like, all of our job collectively to know more and do more. And for me, at least, instead of feeling so much frustration and anger, I was able to channel that energy, because anger does have energy, and channel it into something that was productive. Like, okay, like, this just means that there's a need for what I'm doing. And there's a need for me to, go live on Facebook, for me to create podcasts, for me to keep posting on Instagram, for me to just, in all my little ways, to continue to get the word out, to do my part to kind of counterbalance this. And I believe not in a preachy way, not in a scary way, but in a way that very much just involves my own story. And so I guess the question at the basis of it is, how do I ignore alcohol positive media? And I would actually say, don't ignore it. Like, dig into what inside you is bothered, what inside you is triggered, and then explore what you can do to counterbalance that, like, to look at it in a different way, what you can do to, number one, have understanding and realize, okay, we're still in a process here. We're still in a conversation here. And number two, to make sure you unwind whatever has triggered you inside yourself, not only so that you're not as upset, but also because whenever we push something away, whether it's a negative emotion or we try to ignore something, we really come to a place where it surfaces later, and it surfaces in more with more intensity. And so I would go into that discomfort and be like, why am I uncomfortable here? What do I want to stand for? What do I want to say? How can I, use whatever means that I have, not to preach, not to, go become an evangelist, but just to show up as a best version of myself? How can I use this as fuel to motivate myself to realize the work here isn't done rather than anything else? And so I'd say that again, with every negative emotion that you experience, every point that you're triggered, don't ignore it, go into it and, learn from it and take what you can from it and channel that energy in just more positive ways, because that's the reality, is that we got into the mess of drinking, at least I did, by ignoring all sorts of things. Every time something was uncomfortable, I would ignore it and I would try to numb it away. So the reality is we live in a very, very alcohol saturated world, and it is changing, and it's changing bit by bit and little by little, and it's changing in a good part to people like you and I just showing up and being the best versions of ourselves without alcohol. So great question. Thank you.